Welcome to BRB Gamer, and our guest today is the developer for the software RetroX, Franco Catrin. Franco, welcome.
Thank you for inviting me here.
And we also have our usuals here. We have Mr. Thor.
How's it going, guys?
We have Retro.
Hey, what's up?
I'm your host, Stubborn Pixel. And we also have Choosh with us today.
Thanks for having me once again on this podcast that I am involved in.
Heck yes. I am so excited to dig in to retro gaming today. We've talked a lot of next-gen stuff lately. But today I think we're going to go over a little bit of emulation and front-end talks and games we've been playing or have no time to play. Cue the music. How's everybody doing today?
Life's great.
Yeah.
Turtle and I just put the finishing touches on the Lineage closed beta, so that should be coming up during this podcast.
Right. And that's for that product that I keep hearing so much about, the Retroid Pocket 2.
Yeah.
These nerds on the internet keep talking to me about it, and I'm like, nerds, I get it. It's cool. It does 60 FPS on GoldenEye. Just chill out. Thanks to Choosh's Moopin settings.
Oh my god. Don't get me started.
I'm trolling you all as much as possible. I am already a third of a beer in, so
Same.
My last 3 weeks have literally been watching work come down in the lead up to the holiday break and trying each individual change of Mupen builds between a 9-month setting. I'm 1 month in to this 9 month of changes, and I still haven't got to the build that I had. So we'll get there.
I believe in you.
I believe in myself.
And that's all that really matters.
I'm aware of how much of a slog this is going to be, having been through it already. I ran out of space on my computer 3 times with the amount of builds that I was running through. So I've been constantly removing half of my hard drive day in, day out. And you, Retro, what have you been up to?
I've been getting lots of goodies and trading lots of goodies.
I saw that, all those stickers.
Oh, yeah, man. Since I ran out of consoles and systems to sell, I've been hoarding them specifically for Christmas so that I can get some really good stuff. I'm playing on a PS Vita for the first time ever.
Oh, fantastic.
It's a sleek device.
I've never held one in my life.
You're so retro, you know.
Yeah, I mean the Vita is retro now.
Dude, I don't even know when this came out. When did this come out?
2011, I think, or maybe a little bit before. No, it must have been 2011. Same year as the 3DS.
So in January, this will be retro, I think.
And my week's been up and down and crazy all around, but it's been good. So I'm currently just finished up Assassin's Creed Odyssey on the next gen stuff, and I just started up Cyberpunk, so I'll probably at least touch on that a little bit. But really, we're here today to discuss our guest, Mr. Franco Catrin. So, Franco, again, welcome. Now, you and I have known each other for a few years now. I stumbled upon RetroX when I was looking for front ends back in 2017. And, I tried Arc Browser, I had tried Dig, and I was looking for something that was based in cloud syncing, and I hadn't really seen that. And then I found RetroX, and I was like, oh, this will save and sync my saves across all my devices. This is incredible. Yes, I realized you could do this with products like OneDrive and Google Drive, but this just made it easy, and I didn't have to configure anything. It kind of blew my mind. So I hopped on the bandwagon, and I researched everything I could, got my front end ready. And fast forward a couple of years, you and I have got to work together a little bit, not only on Facebook, but kind of co-running the RetroX Discord with you. So that's really been a big honor for me.
You can hear how much he appreciates the product because he was tearing up a bit in that little bit.
I have tears running out of my eyes, my pores, my nipples. It's
manly pixel-shaped tears.
Manly pixel-shaped tears. So it's been a long road, and I wanted to have you on to kind of discuss just the a few things, but the new update coming out, that's going to be huge. Switching it to a regular front end and letting people connect it to RetroArch and whatever their emulators of choice are. So that'll be cool. But my first question for you is, how did you get started with RetroX? And when did it start?
It started about 2012, maybe. I had a computer, an old computer lying around, and I was first an user, so I used it to install the emulators, set up the emulators, load my games, and that was a lot of work to get the first game running. And many times I changed the computer, and then I had to do everything again. So,
I've been there.
Yeah.
so yes, so I had this computer, and I thought about having that computer all the time connected to the TV and with all the emulators ready to run. And then I started to try to make it easier to use. I don't wanted to use a keyboard or mouse. I wanted to have a device more similar to a game console. And it was a Linux-based machine. There are some videos in YouTube showing that setup. I took I don't know if you are familiar with Linux, but I started with Ubuntu. I changed a lot of the desktop. I removed the desktop and made RetroX boot with the device. At that same time, I think RetroPie was starting up, or I don't remember, but I didn't know about it. So I didn't know that there were other similar efforts to bring a console using a desktop computer. And I started to work in parallel in 3 applications on that same machine. And someday, someone told me that there was an Android device that was cheaper than this computer. And a friend of mine started pushing me to make an Android version of this application. At first, I didn't want to because it was too advanced. So an Android version will require me to start from scratch. But finally, one friend of mine told me that the problem with the Linux version is that the people will have to buy a new device. On the other side, many people already had Android devices, so they already had the hardware.
Oh yeah.
In any case, I didn't start this application like something commercial. I just wanted to make something for me. But several friends asked me about how much they will have to pay to have something similar to my setup, and it was about $300. And
Wow.
the Android device at that time were about $100. So it was very easy to decide finally to bring an Android version of RetroX.
And we thank you for that.
Yeah, and that's the master. That's the master version now.
Yes, that started a revolution for me because I used to work in an office. I worked as an engineer developing corporate applications in Java. But I always wanted to do applications related to video games and music. So when people started to get interested on RetroX, and I started to make it commercial, I was able to say goodbye to my old job and start working on RetroX exclusively for several years.
That's fantastic, man. To be able to take a passion project and turn it into a career, that's amazing.
Yes. And many features I started as something that I wanted to have. For example, the cloud saves was something that I needed because I tend to change my hardware very often. So I like to try devices. I like to try new devices. So for some time, I didn't want to play games because all my progress will be lost.
That's certainly something that I think is a big benefit, because with a lot of people, especially in this kind of thing, when you buy a new device, you play a couple of games to test out how well it's going. And you may not intend to continue playing on that, but constantly having to backtrack, do the same level over and over again. That's definitely a barrier for a lot of people to actually engage in longer form stuff. I think we've talked about this before on the podcast, how longer RPGs, for instance, tend to not get played as much by a lot of us, because the idea of starting Final Fantasy for the 5th time, is pretty frustrating. So that's definitely a benefit, not just if you're moving across from one device to another, but just probably having the option to move from one device to another is something that people don't think about.
I looked up dot save files to see if I can find, pre-saved, progressed games for Final Fantasy, because I didn't want to play the first 5 hours over and over and over again.
That's a thing. There are sites for that.
I also have in my house, I have several devices, not all connected, but at least I have 3 devices. So it was stupid to start playing in one device and cannot continue playing in another device. So that feature was very needed for me, and is very appreciated by many people.
I have to say that the smoothness of your app is pretty much unparalleled, and the themability. It's really impressive, man. I threw it on my Shield TV, and I haven't looked back to RetroArch or even most standalone emulators since.
And what's your plans going forward? Is there features that you're really wanting to add to it that you haven't got around to yet?
Well, I have near-term features and long-term features. In the near term, there is an update that will come soon, soon, that will avoid to have duplicated games. For example, when you have a whole main collection, you will end with a lot of duplicated games. That will be something in the past, in the future. And I want to have a feature to let users have better recommendations of games, because many people have thousands of games, and you sometimes you don't know what to play. And
Tell me about it.
I have always thought that some people think that retro games are only Mario and Donkey Kong and Sonic, but if you look at all the games, there are many great games that people doesn't know that they exist. So I already have a recommended section for recommended games, but I want to have, for example, something like the best shooters for MAME, or the best platform games for Amiga, and groups like that.
Have you thought about a shareable playlist feature?
No, but it's a good idea.
It's coming soon.
Yeah,
please look forward to it.
Wait, and you already have the Rickroll feature where you can just roll random and just get whatever game from whatever category that you're in.
Yes.
Yeah, the random thing is a really great feature. That's something that I really like.
Such a helpful feature to have, because I'm like, I don't know what to play. Pick for me, and it always picks something off the wall, and I'll spend hours then playing that game. Like sometimes, like Sokoban, I found a great Sokoban game for the PC Engine. I was like, this game is amazing.
I was just thinking about PC Engine because Japanese games are very strange. So if you pick some random Japanese game, you will see very original games. For example, there is a game that is called Photo Boy, where you are a photographer that has to take photos of of things that are strange. For example, it's a game like a platform game, but instead of shooting things, you are taking shots of things.
It's like Pokemon Snap.
It's a very weird game.
I went to what's it called? A escape room last night, and it wasn't a very good one, but one of the puzzles that they had on the wall was literally just a box puzzle engine, and it was taking me back to when I was like 6 years old and playing free games that I downloaded from the internet. I was just playing Boxman on this wall puzzle thing. The worst bit about it was a gate puzzle for the rest of the room, so only one person could interact with it, and you had to wait until they were finished with it before it would move on. And there's 5 levels, and I am so out of practice on those. So it ended up taking way longer than I thought, and literally everyone was just standing behind me going, no, that one.
I feel like we've spent, the past 30-ish years doing nothing but problem solving, playing video games. I feel like we would be able to crush that stuff pretty quickly. Like, oh, this is like a standard Zelda puzzle. What are you doing?
Right. That's why it's interesting to find these niche games that had these ideas that were really original at the time, but nobody else picked up on the trend and didn't run with it. And so they just died.
It's because it wasn't a custom map on Warcraft 3, so there's no money in it.
Right. There's no money in it. So the PC Engine, or as in the US, the TurboGrafx 16, has a lot of unique Japanese games.
Well, that's a system that never came to Australia, the PC Engine. It's one of the few that we didn't get at all. So only a couple of people had imported it, I guess. But yeah, we didn't get it at all in Australia.
You missed out. You can buy it now. They re-released it.
Yeah, so it's actually a system that I play a lot on my Odroid Go, because obviously that's a two-button console. It only does 8-bit systems. But PC Engine is perfect on that. So there's a lot of games that I just never knew about, and they hold up really well. Like you said, because of the advanced color palettes, some of them look so much more vibrant than the equivalent Sega 8-bit or Nintendo 8-bit systems. Okay, I would even say that a couple of the games are kind of teetering on that almost 16-bit threshold because of how vibrant and how many palettes can be shown at once.
Yeah, like Airbonk or Airzonk or whatever it's called.
Yeah.
Super colorful. I love the color palette on the PC Engine. It's ridiculous.
Some arcade ports are very good. For example, the Outrun port, or another game that is not well known, Vigilante. It's a great port. I think the best port of those games are on the PC Engine and not the Sega Genesis or Mega Drive.
Yeah. There's a few on there that I was just blown away by how good they look, even today, especially because I'm very aware of the Genesis, or the Mega Drive as it's called here, and the Super Nintendo, having had both of those systems when I was younger. I've played quite a few games on it, and that's definitely a nostalgia trip for me. So sometimes I can overlook things that are a little squiffy. But the PC Engine, because I never owned it, it's less nostalgic and more just new experience. So I'm a little more critical of it. So when I'm excited about it, I'm really excited about it.
So in fact, I don't like emulators at all. I must be honest. Sometimes I prefer to have the original hardware. One of those consoles is the PC Engine. First, I have the TurboGrafx, but it was a PAL system, and it didn't work fine here in Chile. So later, I found a PC Engine in Japan that it was very, very cheap, I think. And it is NTSC, so it works great. I have it connected to my CRT television, and it's a great device. I think that it's one of the best consoles. For example, many people here in Chile know only the Super NES, but I honestly prefer the PC Engine.
Do you collect any other classic consoles?
Yes, I have an Atari computer. No, I have several Atari computers, but only one connected. The Atari computers for the 8-bit era. I have a 130 XE. It's a very good looking machine. I also have an MSX computer, but that one is not connected. I also have the Amiga 500, Amiga 1200, Sega Dreamcast, Sega Saturn. But connected, it's only the Atari one and the PC Engine.
That's quite a collection, man.
I sold all of my consoles a couple of years ago because they were just taking up space in my garage, and I realized I never plugged anything in.
Yes.
And the only one that I really regret selling was the Sega Saturn, mostly because I had such a wide library for it, and also they don't always emulate so well. So
Yeah, that's a tough one.
I have one, but with only one game, and I haven't modded it.
Shining Force 3.
Sega, sorry, the Daytona.
Wonderful. As long as it's Championship Edition, you're ready to go.
Daytona.
So besides some of those new features, one I really wanted to ask you about was that you're implementing a system where people can now connect whatever emulator they want. They don't have to use your built-in emulators. What's that feature like, or how's that going to work with your current setup?
I want to have it only as a last resort feature. It will be something for advanced users. Because the emulators that are included with RetroX are modified to work as if they are part of RetroX. So the whole RetroX experience is when you have the emulators look like they are only one. So the problem with adding more emulators is a bit of step back for RetroX, because what everyone else does. But many people want to play some emulators that are not open source, and they want to play them with RetroX. So I think that having the option to use RetroX for those emulators is a step forward for the freedom of the user to choose.
We talking full solo app integration like Drastic or Moopin and things like that, or are we sticking with RetroArch configurations?
No. That part will be only for example, I don't remember the name. There are very good emulators for 3DO. Or I don't know, Real 3DO, for example. Real 3DO, Dreamcast, EPCX, that is a PlayStation emulator with hardware acceleration.
Okay.
I think those emulators, everything else, I think is well supported by RetroArch. The only thing I have to do is to update the emulators included with RetroX right now. For example,
right.
The N64 emulator, there are two versions, but I know there is another version that runs better with devices like the Retroid Pocket.
Yes.
Go on, which you have now, right? Your Retroid Pocket showed up to Chile.
Yes, I have one, but there is a problem here because the government is setting lockdowns in the cities, but they are starting lockdowns, ending lockdowns. So me and my girlfriend are from different cities. So sometimes I'm at my house, sometimes I at hers house. For example, today I'm not in my house. I'm in hers. And the Retroid Pocket is my house. So
Oh no!
Well, once you get to it, I might pick your brain a couple of times about what progress I've made with Mupen on the RP2. Also, if you find the time, a Sega Saturn emulator with OpenGL backend, OpenGL2 would be great. All of them are built on GL 1.3, so a backport would be fantastic if you find the time.
And I was gonna say I've tried Saturn on the Retroid through RetroX, and it's the only emulator I've gotten to at least turn on and start a Saturn game. I was playing Shining Arc, I believe, Shining Force, at like 11 or 12 FPS, and I was honestly impressed.
Well, like I mentioned, most of the open source Saturn emulators at the moment are built specifically for GLES 3. In fact, a couple of them have removed GLES 2 support entirely. So that's definitely an issue on our hardware.
Actually, RetroX supports 2 Saturn emulators. The old one that is OpenGL S2. I don't remember the name. That is the one that came with RetroArch. And there is support for the OpenGL S3 version of it. I don't remember the name. It is a Japanese name. Yahiro?
Yabo Sanjiro.
Java Sanjiro. Yes, that's the version 3. And what RetroX will try to detect the OpenGL version on your device and will use the emulator for that version. So if you try RetroX on an OpenGL S2 version, it will use Java use. If not, it will use Java Sanjiro.
So that explains why it was able to boot then. Yeah.
It just worked. Like I just booted it right up, and I was like, "What?" Not even GPD XD will do this. I have to mess with a bunch of things.
Yes, and now the Java use in RetroArch is broken, so I made a fix. If you try to run it on RetroArch, you will see a yellow screen. But at least that was the version that I started with. I fixed that. And also the Java Sanjiro version for RetroArch was broken when you try to save a state. I fixed that one.
Cool.
So in RetroX, those 2 emulators work better than RetroArch.
I'm all for moving away from RetroArch. I find it a messy, frustrating, and completely unintuitive interface. Not to say that there's not great performance stuff on there, but if I'm going to centralize, I'm going to centralize with everything but RetroArch.
It could use a redo with user friendliness for sure.
And to play contrarian, I feel the opposite of Choosh. Every point he made, I feel, but the opposite.
To be fair, I think that RetroArch is great. Only that they have other focus. They focus on advancing or developing RetroArch for many systems. So that is a lot of work. So what I do is to get only the Android version and try to improve it, make it work great on Android. But I understand that they cannot do that because it's a ton of works, and they are focused on bringing up the cores, the emulators themselves. So to be fair, I can say that they have something great, only that it requires some final touches to make it the greatest.
Yeah. My focus with my personal career is on my whole thing is the end user comfort, right? And I've seen so many different front ends and emulators, especially since I joined this community, and so many people have a lot of right things, but. And this is going to sound, fanboyish, but I don't think anybody has the smoothness of interface that RetroX has, personally.
Thanks.
Just the integrations, the themability. I really like Rapster's comic theme, by the way, that he ported over.
Yeah, Rapster really pulls his weight in community.
Yeah, but people talk a lot about RetroArch and their expanding compatibility for all these devices. That's great, and I love that they're reaching out to so many different devices on so many different platforms and everything like that. But there does need to be a point where somebody says, "Hey guys, maybe we should make this a little more user friendly."
Oh, for sure. I definitely think that it is my primary concern, and it has been my primary concern since RetroArch first started. And I feel like it's a little inexcusable at this point that the menus are still so segregated and gated. It just doesn't make sense.
And I agree with you there. And I have to eat crow too for a minute, because the best running N64 emulator in RetroX is the standalone Mupen version that that's been modified. It runs way better than the RetroArch core that's in there. Way better. So, I mean, often these standalones just perform so much better. Not only just the messy UI stuff, but yeah, just on a performance standpoint.
But that comment is about the RetroX Pocket, or not?
Yeah, and the RetroX Pocket, I have to use the Mupen old version.
Because on RetroArch, you will not see a difference. You will not see a difference on performance, but you will see a difference on compatibility. I think the RetroArch core is more compatible with the games, but it may work slower on all devices. And probably the standalone one works better because the code is older. So it is they did it for all devices. So maybe that's why it runs better.
Choosh helped me dip my toe into the madness that is the Mupen build versions the other night. And holy crap, I can't believe that such a tiny version change can make such a big difference in performance. I don't remember the numbers, but I literally went up like 3 versions, maybe 4 versions, right? From like 117 to 121 or something like that. And what I had running before at 20 frames per second was now running at 12. And I'm like, what? This is the newer version. What? Why?
That's because they are testing the emulator with new devices. So in newest devices, you will not notice that kind of problems.
There's a few problems with N64 emulation in general. Mostly, a lot of these emulator cores because Mupen is not one single emulator. It's multiple different emulators that are running within it, but in essence, and some of them are based on code bases that go back to 2003. And haven't been modified that much since then. So depending on how much accuracy you're looking at, you're going to get a huge drop in performance. And depending on whether or not you're trying for a specific game to work, you're going to get huge net gains in performance and decreases in performance. Not only are those Mupen iterations changing slight things in the code base, but they're also integrating newer versions of those emulator cores as well. So you might be seeing one of the Glide N cores going from version 1.005 to 1.006, and that netted huge accuracy gains on higher end devices, but huge drops in performance on lower end devices. So that's why it's so difficult when I'm doing these rebases on this specific version for this specific device, because I'm not just trying to find the best code base flatline for Mupen. I'm also trying to find the best versions of the profiles for this specific device. So it's multi-layered and it's going to take me years.
I'm very excited to play test.
It's always a trade-off because for N64, you have to choose between how perfect the emulation is and how the performance is. And you have to choose one. Or you have performance or you have perfect emulation.
It's that same argument about moving from a binary system to a trinary system.
Can I have both, please?
You can continue to iterate on this system that's been around forever and continue to get backwards compatibility for code bases, etc. Or you can throw out everything that everyone else has ever done and start with something completely new. I mean, if you look at Apple computers nowadays, the difference between their PowerPC cores and the performance of OS X is night and day. But many people were very upset when they threw out all of their old OS.
Yes, it happens a lot. It happens a lot with the with MAME as well. That's why RetroX includes 4 versions of MAME. So if you have a slow device, you can use the old versions, but they are not as compatible as the newest ones. But the newest ones require fast devices. So it's quite complex. In a perfect world, these kind of things shouldn't exist. But that's how emulation works. Yeah, and that's why I sometimes prefer the original hardware.
Same here.
It just works. Yeah.
Yeah, that's the main takeaway. Well, with the with the new update, you're having these standalone emulators be built in, but cloud saves won't work with the third-party standalones, right?
No, they won't.
Okay. If someone were to just use the standalones and not use any of the cloud-based system, would there still be the yearly or annual fee for it? Are you having any change in the pricing model, or are you going to stick with the same current pricing model?
Oh, I will stay with the same price model because I don't want to maintain several versions of the application.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's very complex to give support to. So think that I almost do this all by myself. So I prefer to have one version, and every time I receive a support request, I know what version they are using. So it's already complex to give support to different devices and different Android versions. So adding more variations of that, no, it will be impossible.
It isn't just one extra thing; it's exponential after that. I feel you.
Yes, yes.
Yeah, and you're hosting your own infrastructure.
Then
you have your Android version to support and your Raspberry Pi build, the Frambu build.
That must be why the performance of Cyberpunk is so dodgy, right? That's it. It's because they're having to build it for all of those different devices. It's not got anything to do with the buggy code base. What's your experience on this?
No, the only problem for me is Android because on each update they break something.
Yeah.
So sometimes they make changes and some emulators start crashing, or some part of RetroX stop working. That's the worst part, I think. Android. I was happy until Android 6, I think, and after that, all version has been a hell for me.
I just got a big dip into trebleized stuff, the treble ROM switchover, and man, I can't believe how much compatibility broke just going from 7 to 8 with that. It's unbelievable.
For example, the permissions part or the storage part is horrible. For example, in the past, you were able to write your SD card, and RetroX will be able to read the card and write the config there, download everything there, even download games and store the games there. But from some point, I think Android 7 or 6, changing all the permissions, and today it's very hard to write to that device, and people expect those things to work as easy as a computer, but Android is quite different.
Well, okay, so we talked a bit about the update now. So besides that, what are your other hobbies besides programming? I know you do a little guitar, right?
Yes, I play electric guitar. I like to play rock and metal music.
I'm sure a lot of people will want to know which brand. Are you a brand boy, or are you just an enthusiast of guitars in general?
Oh, I have some favorites. For example, I always like the Ibanez brand. They make great rock guitars. But I hate the latest ones. I don't know. The latest guitars from Ibanez are very horrible for me. I prefer the old style, more on the 80s vibe.
I think it's for me definitely with Ibanez. It's not the visual design. The new ones I like. It's the pickups. They sound really tinny. I don't know what they've done, but yeah.
Yes, I don't like it. I like if I will have to talk about pickups. I like, for example, the Tone Zone, which the other one. They're very 80s and 90s. That's the kind of sound I like on Ibanez. For example, there is a band called Dream Theater.
Dream Theater, hell yeah.
Yes, and John Petrucci, the sound that he had in the 90s, I love that sound. So I'm quite old-fashioned about that. But I also have two Squire guitars. Squire is the cheapest side of Fender. I have a Squire Stratocaster and a Squire Telecaster, and they are very versatile guitars. You can play a lot of different kind of music on those guitars. For example, one of my favorite artists and players, composer, songwriter is Richie Kotzen. It's not so popular, but he has a very different sound of his Telecaster because you can change a lot of the intensity of what you play depending on how much strong you pick the strings. For example, you can play very softly and very hard, and there is a quite different sound. It's like having several guitars at once. The same happens with the Stratocaster. I like a guitar player that is called. It's from Canada. He's very young.
Oh,
Yes.
Canada.
I don't remember the name.
Is his name Justin?
Celine Dion.
Nick Johnston.
Prime Minister?
Yes. Nick Johnston. Nick Johnston. There is a way to play the guitar when the guitar is part of the body. It's the guitar is a way of expression. This guy Nick Johnston, you feel like the guitar is singing because of all the expression. And lately, I've seen some guitars, but they are very expensive. The Mayonnaise guitars, they're great, very expensive.
Well, I'm definitely probably an Epiphone man myself. Converted from Fender, I finally I picked up an SG, and I could not look back. And then I picked up an Epiphone version of the I can't remember the name of that, the standard body Gibson guitars. It's purple and it's beautiful, and I like playing on it. It's very silky. But yeah, that's really cool to hear that all your passion for music and the different guitars you enjoy. My last question to close out the interview with you is, what game are you playing right now?
No game.
If you're playing a game. No games.
No, I'm not playing it. No games. I have a problem because when I try to play games, I start to think about things to improve in RetroX. So yes, it's
dude, I feel you so hard. Holy crap!
It's funny because I work on RetroX, I work on music applications, and I work on IPTV applications. The problem is when I try to use them, I cannot stop thinking about things to fix or improve. So
I think all of us can understand that.
Yeah.
So I mostly don't watch movies, don't play games, don't.
You consume no media.
I was developing hardware mods for the RP2 2 months before I got my hands on one. So I feel you, man.
From a simpler standpoint, I start playing a game and I'm like, but I bet I can emulate this better. Let me look through every menu in RetroArch, compare every version on GitHub, and see which one is going to give me the most frames per second so I can play the rest of Castlevania.
Should I go with Frameskip 2 or Frameskip 3?
Oh, it's a tough choice.
It's a toughie.
So you guys have actually played games on your RP2?
Dude, I beat Aria of Sorrow on that mother.
Yeah.
I haven't tried mine in 1 month. I don't even know if it turns on.
Right, I know you're a trader now. You're over on the Anbernic side playing with the 280D and with your new Game Boy Advanced. And
I haven't tried the 351 yet. I haven't even.
Oh,
So the 280V is my favorite. I like how pocketable it is.
How
I can
tiny it
play
is.
Game Boy games on it perfectly.
I-
So
well, it's fine because I'm an absolute hypocrite because I've been playing the fuck out of Cyberpunk the last few days.
Same.
I forgot all about retro gaming.
My big splash in was when Turtle contacted me today. He's like, "Hey, I'm doing a release today." I'm like, "What the fuck are you talking about? I just woke up."
No,
He goes, "No, you need to rewrite the guide." And I'm like, "Oh my god, I just want to play Cyberpunk."
I gotta art role play in Cyberpunk.
is it as good as the E3 2018 trailer puts it?
The tech demo, no, they cut the NPC count down significantly, but the latest update, the 17 gigabyte update, made the visuals way better on PS5, and so far the story is super fucked up and excellent.
I've had to actually tell people off on the Retro Discord for talking about the game because I don't have time off until Christmas Day. So
You're almost there.
I'm not
You're
buying it
almost
for
there.
another 2 weeks almost.
Well, if you buy it now and you get a Stadia account, then you get some free shit.
Sorry for everyone listening to this in January. We're a couple of weeks behind.
I know. I told
Absolutely.
what was it? I told Pandora that we're evergreen content, meaning that it's timeless. You can listen to these episodes whenever without worrying about the news. But I'm realizing that's a straight up lie.
It's really specific.
It is. Yeah.
You liar.
I know. Well, they're like evergreen or timely, and I'm like, what does that mean? I had to Google it, and I'm like, oh, I guess we're evergreen. We're talking about retro gaming.
I had to cut a bunch of content regarding us receiving the Retroid Handhelds edition Retroid Pocket 2 because I realized that episode was going to come out 2 weeks after I revealed who won it. So us saying, "Oh, we can't talk about it," was a bit specifically on the nose. But
yeah, this one probably won't even be out till late January, February. But
I was asking Choosh, "Hey, can you put up the Taki episode?" And he's like, "Well, all of them are outdated, so it doesn't really matter."
It doesn't technically matter.
By the time this one comes out, though, Cyberpunk will have gotten like 300 gigabytes worth of updates, though, so it'll be fine.
Hoping.
We had 65 gigabytes of updates in the first 2 days. All right, the first one was like 68 gigabytes. The next one was 17.
You guys have got unlimited internet over there, right?
Not unlimited. Well, now, I mean, I finally paid Comcast. I'm like, hey, what do I have to pay you to stop like charging me for going over every month? Because I'm going to go over every month forever.
Right.
Let's be clear about that. And so they gave me it's like $30 extra a month, and I'm like, fine.
Yeah, I give AT&T their $30 blood money for unlimited every month. So
yeah, because in Australia everything's unlimited. It's just based on speed, and our speeds aren't that great. So like you can get a 400 megabit connection if you pay like $200 a month. But for the most part, our speeds kind of cap out at roughly 90 megabit a second. But yeah, again, everything's unlimited.
I'm ready for Starlink. Give me Starlink, and I'm done.
Yeah.
Just I live in the middle of nowhere. All right, the middle of nowhere. I had to pay off the AT&T guy to run Uverse to my house over a bonded DSL connection. Okay, because I was 17 feet. My house was 17 feet outside of the quote unquote service area. Okay,
move your house. Like that's easy.
Just move your fucking house.
Just extend your house out 17 feet.
I would have just moved my fence.
I was driving like 4 miles in the city of Los Angeles, and I was like, "This feels like the boonies."
No, dude, I have to drive minimum 30 minutes at breakneck speed just to get to a Taco Bell. Okay, minimum 30 minutes, probably more like 45 to an hour with traffic.
I don't think there's Taco Bells in LA.
Every time Retro says anything to me, in my head, I'm singing California every time Retro says anything. I just can't stop.
Before I had my kid, I used to drive around in a Miata, and I would love to drive around with my Santa hat in December, and it was nice and warm. It was no big deal.
I cleaned my gutters out today in a pouring rainstorm in my underwear in freezing cold rain.
It's because you're literally a Viking, just incarnate.
We're in summer, and outside. Well, not this year, but on all other years, you can see Santa Claus dressed as there was snow outside, but there was hot sun, and they suffer a lot.
Yeah.
It's summer at the moment here as well. And last year, this time, we were having, some of the worst fires that we've had in a decade. And this year, we had a 3-degree night the other day. And then the next day was 27 degrees Celsius. Sorry for everyone who's listening and doesn't. But it was such a rapid change from like back to winter and then immediately back to summer. And it's just, I think everyone's getting sick. Like we're finally out of lockdown. We've had 0 cases of corona for something like a month and a half now, which is fantastic. Touch wood, it stays this way. But everyone's getting sick again because the weather is just going up and down at such a rapid rate.
Yeah.
It's like a bad joke.
Yeah,
Just
it
start the
is.
morning and yes, what kind of station is this? We in summer, winter? What happened here?
My
What is
homies are such ball breakers if we're around each other because we have a weekly D&D game night, but we all get tested every week. If anybody sneezes, we start the ball busting about the do you have the Rona? Do I need to kick you out of my fucking house? You know?
Yeah, like, get out of my house now. Yeah, which gets complicated, and your kids can't play with their friends, and they don't come over because you're like, well, do I know the neighbor? Yeah, they're probably safe, but I don't know.
Yeah, my daughter had her first play date in forever. I think I talked about it last week.
No, yeah.
And I mean, like literally like 9 months, right? She hadn't seen her best friend. But they had their first play date and it went great. But at the same time, I was sitting there about an hour into it going, how do 2 7-year-old girls make this much noise? How is this possible? This is insane. It is insane. So.
Well, we had something like 200 days of explicit lockdowns, which meant that we were only allowed to go to the supermarket, basically, and everything else you were inside. Yeah. So there was no visiting. Like I hadn't seen my parents for 200 days. And when I finally started interacting with people after the restrictions started to ease, I had completely forgotten how to. Completely forgotten how to interact with people on a face-to-face level because the only interaction I was getting was over the occasional Teams meeting or on the phone.
Yeah.
It was really interesting.
Yeah, it's bizarre seeing people in person now. I'm like, weird. They're so 3-dimensional. Like you can almost like touch them. They're so real looking. Look at the ray tracing on that dude's face.
Such ray tracing.
What is that smell?
Yeah. Oh, people smell worse. You don't have to smell people over video calls.
I can't smell people through my mask.
Oh yeah,
that's the other thing. That's a good reason why we shouldn't be touching virtual reality yet. There's no smell-o-vision. That needs to come back quickly.
Yeah, we need that extra dimension. Disney's working on that, and I'm not joking. They are working on it. They had the Soar ride at Disneyland or World or whatever. They actually like spray you with fresh grass smell and stuff like that on the ride. You know about this?
I got to see Blade Runner, the modern version in 4DX, and I prefer it not.
That was the one where the chairs are just constantly slamming you in the back of the spine.
Yeah, I didn't like that.
I just didn't understand that.
It's like watching movies in 120 hertz or 120 FPS. It's like so real and hyper realistic that it's just like ruins the movie experience.
I remember when they updated Lord of the Rings to 60 frames, and I was like, this looks fucking terrible.
It's because it's not because of the frame rate. It's not because of the frame rate. It's because you don't have selective focus. Is the reason why it's so difficult. It was also the reason why so many people get headaches during 3D movies, because when you try to add depth to something, but you don't also have the ability to focus on the foreground or background, it causes your eyes to get heavy strain because you're trying to focus on something that is inherently out of focus. So when you do 3D films, it works really well for animated films because you can have everything in unlimited focus at all times. You don't have to have focal points anywhere. But in real life, you need to use really closed aperture in order to get as much in focus as possible. So, but that also makes it look kind of dodgy because when we want to be cinematic, we want to push the eye to the thing that we want to focus on. But it doesn't work so well in 3D.
I'm one of those sickos that actually likes playing really beautiful games in 30 frames per second to maintain that cinematic feel. Because I understand that 60 frames it's more about immersion, it's more about the realism, the response. Yeah, I am a film nerd, but
and go for 24. Go for 24 frames per second.
Yeah, not 24, 23.98.
23.98. I know. Okay. Okay. All right. All right, Thor.
Good luck. Good luck getting that on any single LCD that's less than $3,000.
But yeah, when they're like, oh, we have a 200 megahertz refresh rate, I'm like, ¿por qué? Like, why
Get it out?
Why do you care that much?
But seriously, there is an aesthetic point of view because when they made the film, they add some kind of it's not real, and that's the magic of what you're watching. The surrealism. Yes, it's very similar to what happens with all games when you play them on CRT and you don't see the pixels. And it's a very organic experience compared to when you see the blocky pixels on a modern screen. You lose all the aesthetics. So I think that same happens with the movies. If you see a movie that is more like the reality, it's less an art. I think maybe.
Yeah.
This is definitely something I've had long conversations with people about this because I for many systems I emulated on a PC before I actually had the system in real life.
Yeah.
So before I got a PlayStation, I was playing Tekken 3 on the old emulator. Don't know if anyone remembers this one, but it was an iteration of Bleemcast, I think, or just Bleem. But yeah, it was dodgy. It was super dodgy, and the pixels were very obvious because you were rendering it out in like 480p on a CRT. But even then, like computer CRTs were at that time doing 800 vertical or 1024 vertical pixels. So it was very obviously pixelated. But for me, that move to digital was not much of a push because I was used to seeing all of the heavy pixels when I was emulating lower res on a higher res screen. For other people who only ever played the physical hardware, it's a big issue, and it's something that I know Retro feels very strongly about. You should be playing CRT-based games on a CRT screen.
I prefer it. I mean, you can play N64 on a HDMI TV, but that mod costs like $300.
Not to mention those textures. That texture mapping on the Nintendo 64 is ass, and you can't fix that.
No, you have to blur it as much as possible.
That's part of it.
Yeah. There is a video from Digital Foundry in some modern games using a CRT, and there are some advantages because most of the work on modern TVs is to try to make the image more natural. So you don't need that on a CRT because it's more organic. You don't have pixels, so everything is rounded.
Maybe that's part of the nostalgia for a lot of that era as well. We've talked a lot about game mechanics and how everything was new. So in the modern day, it feels old. But maybe that is definitely part of it. Is those games were made to be played that way specifically? You know, that's what they were made for, and that's maybe why it feels odd, even emulating on my 4K TV on my Shield, on my Shield, Super Mario 64 or anything like that. There is something that's still off.
Yes.
And I don't feel that connection to it like I think I did. And I've always thought that maybe that was from me being older, and playing a game that from a much simpler time. But it could have a lot to do with playing things the way that they were meant to be played. So that's something I think I
I
should
kept
look
a
into.
CRT for a really long time, but it wasn't because I enjoyed playing games on a CRT. It was just because I really love light gun games.
Yeah.
Oh
Yeah.
yeah.
Although I'm really excited about that Sinden gun. Everything I've seen looks absolutely fantastic, and I'm really keen to get that. I might actually ask my partner for that for Christmas. Who knows? Let's see what happens.
Fingers crossed.
That and Cyberpunk.
You're right. I still have PTSD to this day from that damn dog in Duck Hunt. He just laughs at me.
Just stares into your soul. I think I have more PTSD from the little monster in Ski Free on 3.1 that gets you eventually.
Every time.
Every
I loved
time.
that game. I loved it so much. Doing a double backflip and then immediately running into a tree and getting hit by that monster. Oh my god.
I equally suck at House of the Dead. So Typing of the Dead, that's my game.
Typing
That
of the
one I
Dead.
can do. Well, great. I think we're gonna wrap it up here, guys. So, Franco, again, thank you so much for coming on today. Where can we find RetroX for those who have not seen it?
RetroX.tv.
Perfect. And I understand there's a 5-day demo, right? Before people need to decide if they do want to buy it or not.
Yes, you can use all the features except cloud service. But all the features are available. That's because space costs a lot. So I cannot afford to store the games from all the people that is trying the app. But everything else is on the app. And I always ask people to try the 5 days and then decide if they want it or not. Because there are so many options, there are free options, and you have to see if it fits to what you want to have as a front end for you.
Well, that's great. Thank you so much again for talking on it today. We will be back with you guys again next week. I am your host, Stubborn Pixel.
Retro GM.
Thor.
And I'm Choosh. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay, we should be good to go. Sorry, continue.
Had to smack dat ass. Okay,
Smack
so